y'all doing, everybody? For this part right here, we're going to go through Night Creatures. This is the book about vampires, werewolves, and other creatures of the night. All the myths and legends about them. So let's give it a go. Alright. And this one is, like Ghosts. It starts off with sort of some starry borders around there. And we turn the page. Stands at 2. And not much, just like a storm's brewing. But then we see, you know, bats in the air. Yeah, for some night creatures, yeah, expect more. A bit more cryptic. Then the dawn shows up. I guess it's just the terrors of the night is what's showing here. Alright, so here we go. Good John Howe picture here. And of course, this is actually Grendel from Beowulf. Well, I like that version of Grendel. And we see Grendel, I'm sorry, Beowulf, and as mindlessly murderous as her offspring. Grendel's dam was slain in her Grendel's dam was slain in her bone-littered cave by the Geatish hero Beowulf. That's supposed to be Grendel's mother there. See, you see, you know, Grendel's in the background dying. At this point, he'll be having one arm, bones everywhere. You know, if there was just once a definitive live-action version of Beowulf, just telling the base story, that'd be nice. Born of primal chaos, the Greek goddess Nyx soared across the sky each night, draping the heavens with her black veil and bejeweling her trail with stars. There we go, we got a little bat here. A winged emblem of evil, swooping and swerving as they hunted at night, bats struck fear into the hearts of humankind. They were furred like beasts, yet winged like birds, yet in between nature believed to link them into old magic. Some folks said the bats were the ghosts of the unburied dead, or the criminals of those who trafficked with evil. Others concluded that they were witches in disguise, or even cloaks for Satan himself when they were traveling. People who were bold enough or foolish enough to deal with the forces of darkness attempted to put bats' bodies to use. Witches reportedly included the blood of bats and the ointments that enabled them to fly. Slavic men wore dead bats suspended from their necks, thinking the emanations from the little corpses would arouse desire in women. And in the Austrian Tyrol, it was said that a person who acquired a bat's left eye could become invisible at will. Okay, the beliefs people had back then. Now, this one's an interesting picture. You got a guy wandering at night. Unwise was a wayfarer who continued to journey by night in the shadows cast by cold moonlight. Greedy eyes glittered, claws curled, teeth clicked. And if you look on the other side, you see sort of shadows of something that you don't quite see clearly. And again, glare does not help, but yeah. There we go. Attended by ghostly throngs, Hecate, ancient queen of dark and death, left her netherworld nightly to terrify travelers. Such was her power that even the earth trembled at her approach. Haunter of Scottish byways, a headless man, a headless human trunk, guarded the lands and the McDonald's of Morar. Women and children were ignored, but male wanderers died in its strong hands. So, haunting piece here. By many a rural road lurked the night fiends known as Dark Riders. They sprang upon the backs of travelers, clawing with cruel hands and scorching with fiery breath. Oh. Kind of reminds me of the scene from, Let the Right One In. At least the American version of that. Where a little girl as a vampire jumps on one of her victims. There's a very disturbing picture here. Captain reads, the hills of Leicester were haunted by the hag Black Annis, a remnant of an old world enemy new. Beneath a gnarled oak tree lay her cave. It was adorned with the skins of little children who had ventured too near. I wonder if this is a related tale similar to like the Baba Yaga of Russia. Instead of living in a one-footed chicken hut, as in a hut that actually has a leg of a chicken supporting it. You know, she just lived in a cave and had similar things to frighten children with. It's very scenic picture here, except for something entombed into the rock. The night trolls that stalk Iceland's frozen fastness fed on human flesh. Against such a foe, the strongest mortals might fail, but a merest touch of daylight would turn it to stone. Let's see. This is one of those in-between stories. I don't know if I have a... You know, let's see. I think I'll go ahead and give this... No, I think I'll skip this one. So, you know, nice macabre artwork there. I think the harp there has a certain possession about it. Who would want this as a poster in their home? Visitations from the realm of shadow. You know. Oh, here we go. Children knew all too well the terrors of the night. One long-armed creature of darkness laired beneath the stairs and houses, waiting for small victims. Rawhead and Bloody Bones was the name the youngsters gave it. Of course, if you look at the bottom there. So you live at home like this, how do you not notice all that? Haunting picture here. No lock or bolts was proof against night prowlers, as Scottish folk knew. There were sleeping villages crept a green-clad figure with a wizened child. As easily as moonlight, she slipped into their houses, seeking the balm of infant's blood. Battling the spider demon. Okay, let's go with this Japanese one. Let's see. Even the bravest of mortals quail before the wrath of night goblins, as shown by the tales of ancient Japan. In that country there lived a nobleman named Reiko, who boldly undertook to rid the city of Kyoto of its demons. Retaliation by the fiends of darkness was swift. A wasting fever struck the hero. For many days, the nights he lay in his chamber, guarded by companions, but assailed by sick fancies. And on a night swarmed with dreams, the visions gathered solid form. Reiko awoke to find himself chained to his pallet by countless silk filaments. Above him wavered many-jointed, bristling legs, and huge eyes glittered. Reiko had become the spider's prey. No sound came from Reiko's companions. They sat, they sat against the wall entrance, neither watching nor speaking. How long Reiko lay helpless in the spider's trap, he never afterwards could tell. Nor could he tell how he found strength to grasp the sword that lay beside him, but grasp he did. He cut his silken bonds and swung the weapon so that it slashed into its hairy legs. From the spider's maw came a gurgling scream, but the warrior could fight no more. He fell back, trembling with weakness, and closed his eyes and waited for death. Death did not come. The wounded spider, leaving Reiko where he lay, scuttered through the shadows to the safety of its earthen lair. Its departure lifted this web of spells that had held Reiko's companions. Awakening, they looked in horror upon their prostrate general and the sword that had fallen from his fingers. Then they saw the twitching spider legs, behind him, and a trail of Maladora's blood that led, into the dark. Determined on revenge, they followed the tracks to his end and slew the main monster. And when they returned, they were overjoyed to find Reiko alive and well, even after his sword, was called Kumokiri, or spider cutter, for it worked against the demons of the night. This famous painting right here. With talons that caught and remorselessly held, with weight that crushed a breath away, with eyes that gleamed foul images, shadow demons invaded human houses and human dreams. That's, sort of a shadow demon right here, and it always came in on a horse, a nightmare, so to speak. And this one, an implacable spoiler of an enemy of humankind from the beginning of time. Lilith the seducer slid into men's dreams, stealing her victims' vigor and shattering their spirits. We have this. The dream lover called the Mara was a thief cloaked in darkness. Taking vapor form, she slid into sleeping chambers through tiny chinks and crevices. She assumed the shape of a woman to claim the souls of men. And here we got this picture. It was dangerous to weep too long for the dead. The demon lover of one maiden answered her mournful cries and carried her into the earthen marriage bed. And as usual, if you have questions about the artwork, go ahead and comment down below, and I'll try to answer who did the paintings here and drawings. Let's see. Charting the Kingdom of Dreams. Night is a time when the soul surrenders. No one makes the voyage through the dark alone. When mortals sink into the seas of sleep, they were caught at once in nets of dreams. The dark sets free 1,000 creatures, feline, serpentine, half-bodied, disembodied, and they roamed everywhere. Upstairs and downstairs in the sleepers' chambers, endowed with shadows life under their own. These beings cared nothing for order or reason and sense. They make a baffling, dreaming world where time moves backwards and walls melt at a glance, where beasts can talk and stranger things and beasts can walk. I mean, it is a world that humankind long sought to comprehend. In earlier days, people said that dreams were messengers from the gods or envoys from the realm beyond the grave. Learned men studied them, and seen in the following pages, saw clearer connections between dreaming magic and a waking future. Alright, moving on. A dream of flight by wind or wings was said to be a sign that the dreamer would soon enjoy some great success. And what of dream pursuits by shadow men through alien streets? They meant turbulence and trouble by daylight. This has always been a weird picture to me. Scholar says that if a dreamer sank into watery depths, his waking fate was to be drawn down into poverty. This artist was clearly inspired by Hieronymus Bosch, I believe. Fortune tellers heard of dreams of leafy stillness, of warm flesh drying and limbs twisting into bark and branches, and said that these dreams meant impending illness. Of course, there's someone in the background here also turning into a tree. Let's see. Blood Feast of the Damned. Guess what this chapter is going to talk about? Let's see. Eluding the grass of the grave, the undead rose each night to seek the sustenance of blood. Thus the fathomless hunger of the creature Nadilla drove her to attack her husband, a cruel betrayal of life and love. Because those who had done evil during their lives might do evil after death, measures were taken to thwart their return. Criminals were hanged at distant crossroads so that the revenants would have difficulty finding their way back home. I got a picture here. A guy coming out of a coffin, fanged, of course. The hours and days after death were perilous. If a body was not carefully guarded from wandering spirits, it might become a host for evil and burst the bonds of its coffin. There we go. Very atmospheric picture. Child Ear to Black Forest. Most of the tales of children paint the world in cheerful hues, but a few see the very center of evil. One tells of a brother and sister trapped by a flesh-eating ghoul. The children, Hansel and Gretel by name, were abandoned by their parents in the German wood during a time of famine, when the adults themselves were starving and had no food for younger mouths. Left alone, the two simple two simply wandered among the trees. They might have gone on until they dropped, had they not come upon a small house carved in an ornate fashion of the region, and flanked by a squat chimney that gave forth a fragrant ribbon of smoke. Smoke meant cooking, and children scratched at the door, unashamed to beg. A pair of long arms instantly pulled him aside. The thing that gripped him bore the rattled face of a crone. She locked the door. They were her prisoners now. At least they were fed. Day after day, the crone gave them gruel. Day after day, muttering and chuckling to herself, she poked at them with bony fingers, cruelly pinching the flesh as if to test it. Today came at last when she busied herself with the bellows of her deep oven. She spoke to the children from time to time, repeating the same gloating refrain: "I like my meat cooked." When all was ready, she dragged them into the oven mouth. But the children were stronger now, having been fed for many days to fatten them up. According to the story, they succeeded in pushing the crone into her own oven and slamming it shut. It was said that Hansel and Gretel then found the old woman's gold and took it to her parents, so they never were hungry again. But this may have been an invention made for the sake of lightning to tell savage truths. The vampires' disguises. Possessed of every weapon of stealth and evil, vampires were formidably skilled at changing shape. They did not, as is sometimes believed, change into bats. The metamorphosis was a literary invention added to vampire tales after the discovery of New World bats that fed on blood. But to move undetected from place to place, vampires could dissolve to dust or mist, sail through the air as owls, and run among the ground as wolves or cats. The vampires of Japan particularly favored the last transformation. These night roamers said to frequent the courts of early Japanese princes. Let's see. Presented the relatively innocent appearance of court concubines at most times, and in this guise, drained the lifeblood of lovers. It startled or pursued, however, that they dwindled in size, dropped their kimonos, and emerged from their silken folds as large, swift cats, marked as vampires by the fact that they had two tails. Some person there walking down the city streets. If a Bulgarian villager saw a shadow that was vaguely human in shape but not cast by an immortal, he knew he stood a risk, for the shadow was a fledgling form of vampire. When the creature grew strong, it would become a killer. Looks like the image of a man surrounded by many red-eyed people, mostly women. One dark night recalls a Scottish tale. A group of huntsmen fell prey to Bohan Sith, women vampires who roamed the highlands. The vampires whirled at men in a dance of death and drank their blood as they trod the lively measure. Impaling the burial body. Brutal means were used to put an end to the ravaged vampires. The graves of suspected corpses were opened to see if decay had done its natural work. If, instead, the bodies were fresh and full of blood, people knew that, they housed a vampire spirit. Evidence from old burials revealed the sort of action fearful folk took them. To rob the corpse of power to walk, the leg tendons might be cut. Sometimes the heads were severed and placed between its eyes, or vampires might be pinned to the ground by driving stakes of hawthorn or ash through the hearts of skulls. A nail of iron, always proof against evil, was better. It was said that the torrents of blood from such corpses rose like fountains in the air. Was I love showing that in the old movies? Almost a comical effect. A graveyard where two men fighting. In Russia, Cossacks told of a man, a soldier by training, who bravely fought a vampire hand to hand through one long night until dawn forced it into the stillness of the grave. Villagers sought to put an end to the evil then. Villagers burned the trapped vampire to ashes, but even as the host body withered, the demon spirit sought freedom, leaping from the flames in the forms of serpents and other swift creatures. And focus on this there. If from the pyre of a vampire even one creature escaped, the vampire spirit could survive. All too soon it would find another host to rise to walk again amongst the living. Night Stalker of Krugling Grange. Yeah, let's see. I think I'll skip this one's a bit kind of lengthy there. There's a vampire story. Show all classic scenes from such a thing. And it looks like they found it as found it his grave. The Way of the Werebeast. This is kind of cute, really, and kind of protective. Let's see. For the creatures called werewolves, the thrill of attaining animal power came at a price of agony. In the transformation, still hair pierced human flesh, sharp fangs burst through human gums, and lust for killing fouled the human heart. Before battle, warriors of Scandinavia donned great bearskins, thinking thus to gain earth-sign strength and courage that would enable them to overwhelm any foe. Here we go. It was told of men of the Volsung clan that they unwittingly brought tragedy upon themselves when, in jest, they covered their bodies with wolfskins. The wolfishness entered their souls, turning son against father and father against son. Here's another classic. A Sly Killer. All children knew the tale of Red Riding Hood and her miraculous escape from a wolf. The children, the children of earlier centuries, however, heard a more somber tale. In Germany, winter was a lean season when hollow-bellied wolves prowled near human paths. But the creature Red Riding Hood met was more than a wolf. He surely had once been a man. He knew the ways of men and the naivete of little girls. When he spied a bright cloaked figure trotting upon the forest track, he might have sprung, but there was other mortals about. Instead, he called out softly, from the underbrush, "Where do you go, my pretty maid?" Seeing the silvery dog-like face that peered in the brambles, Red Riding Hood smiled delightfully, by the talking animal. "To my grandmother's house, dog," she replied. "The house at the end of the track." At once, the wolf conceived a plan. With a flick of his tail, he vanished, speeding ahead of the little cottage. Then he disappeared to dispatched her grandmother without much interest. She was an old lady, and then he climbed into her comfortable bed to wait. After a few moments, the child knocked at the door. "Come in," the wolf fluted. The child entered, but paused out of range. He peered over the covers. "My grandmother, what big ears you have! The better to hear you, my dear." She came closer. "Why, grandmother, what big eyes you have! Better to see you, my dear." She stepped closer still. "Grandmother, what big teeth you have! To better to eat you with." Terrified, she whirled to run, but the wolf was quick, and his teeth met in the red cloak in an instant. Then he feasted slowly and pleasurably on the rosy flesh and sweet young blood of Red Riding Hood. What he could not eat, he carried away in chunks and buried for a later meal. Sounds kind of hooky until you get to the end. Nights spent prowling in animal form doomed humans to ultimate grief. So a werewolf of Italy, although he tried to forfend it, slaughtered and fed upon his own wife. And we got this one of a Hand in the Box. A Secret Life Unmasked. Although the body of a werebeast changed its outward shape, it remained the same body, housing the same spirit. Thus, a woman received by a werebeast in an animal's guise was inevitably transferred to human form. A tale from France provides a case in point. Near Riom, in the Auvergne, where the landscape was a tumbled tableau of rocky pinnacles and heavy forests, lived a lord who sent his master huntsman in search of a wolf that had been attacking his flocks. The huntsman found the animal one day at dusk, in a wood near the manor pasture. He drove it into an ambush, and there the creature turned on him. Its spring knocked him to the ground, but the man was quick to recover. He drew his hunting knife and severed one of the beast's paws. With a howl, the wolf leaped away and vanished in the wood. The hunter took a paw for his trophy, placing it in the box and presenting it, to his master with pride. But when the casket was opened, it did not contain a paw. In the box was a woman's hand adorned with a ring that was the twin to the Lord's own signet. Both men knew that what this meant. The hand was that of the Lord's wife. The Lord strode to her chamber. He found, as he expected, that physicians were attending, her there, dealing with the consequences of what she claimed was an accident. Her left hand had been severed at the wrist. "Here is your hand, woman," he said, and he ordered her burned at the stake for being a werewolf. Guess which classic story this came from? We'll find out in a second. Condemned by cruel enchantment to a life of savagery, a creature with no name but beast roamed the corridors of its palace prison and haunted in the night, awaiting a human love that alone would set it free. Bereft of love, the beast despaired and gave itself to death, yet life was offered at the last from the heart of a maiden called Beauty. This is the last story here. I'll read it here. We'll get a good picture. This takes place in Japan. The Fox Maiden. Silky-furred, bright-eyed, wily, and sweetly mocking, the little kitsune foxes of Japan were both loved and feared by mortals. Some kitsune, or kitsune, however you pronounce it in Japanese, served a harvest god, and these were honored at the god's shady roadside shrines, and in his mighty temple compound stood hosts of pretty foxes carved in stone and adorned with jeweled eyes. But most kitsune were evil beasts that could assume the shape of beautiful women and rob mortal men of vigor and goodness. Among such malevolent kitsune, the most powerful and enduring was Tamamo no Mei. In her human guise, she was a courtesan so exquisite and skilled that she was called the Jewel Maiden. Her victims were kings and conquerors. Tamamo's origins were obscure. It was thought that thousands of years before she arrived in Japan, she had been an Indian king's concubine, consort, appearing at times as a woman and at times as a white fox with 9 tails. As either she was heartless, her chief pleasure was the slaughter of innocents. Eventually, she was expelled from India. Later, legend said that the fox woman, next appeared in China in the harem of the Shang tyrant Chao Xin. To satisfy her extravagant taste, the besotted emperor created vast pleasure gardens whose lakes were filled with wine and whose trees were hung with baskets and delicacies, knowing that she would appreciate a leap of humiliation. He commanded the ladies of the court to dance among the flowers and of the gardens of her amusement. They refused, so Chao Xin devised a better entertainment. He forced the women onto the pit filled with vipers and bees. As Tamamo remarked in her soft voice, the ladies danced quite briskly. Then they died in agony. The dissipation of the Chinese court became so constant and egregious that the people at last revolted against the scandal. Tamamo was executed and her body burned, but from the ashes sprang a snowy fox, swift as the wind it made for Japan. In the court of the rising sun, Tamamo took a woman's form again and seduced Toba, Emperor of Japan. He steadily awakened her, in her company. Finally, during the night of storms, he fell into a swoon, calling her name. At that, the nimbus of triumphant light played around Tamamo's head. The emperor's counselors saw it and recognized what she must be. They exposed Tamamo's nature by holding a mirror before her face. The glass reflected not the countenance of a woman, but the white-furred muzzle of a fox. By this, the evil magic was broken. The woman reverted to fox form and streaked away, mourning the pavilions of the palace. For some days, the creature lingered near, killing small animals and birds when it could, until the people set their dogs on it. The fox then fled, retreating to the sulfur smoke moor of Nasu, in the central part of the island of Honshu, where the owls sang all night long in mournful chorus and the jackals whined on the wind. There, the kitsune dwindled into a stone, it was said, and lay solitary in sullen grandeur of the plan. Nothing that touched the stone or even appeared it survived the experience. It cast a miasma so venomous that insects and birds littered the ground nearby. Poets said only clouds could fly over Sesho Seki, a name that meant stone of life destruction. And there you go. That is Night Creatures. If you're horror fans, this one, Ghost, and one more I'm going to bring about after this video would definitely suit you. That is Night Creatures from Time Life in the Enchanted World. Thank you all for watching. You have a nice day.